Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and Denuvo has been a hot-button topic for PC gamers since its introduction into the games industry back in 2014. Since then, Denuvo has earned a reputation for causing significant impact on video game performance, owing to the Denuvo anti-tamper DRM making numerous calls to online servers in order to re-verify for integrity. And it would appear that the owners of Denuvo intend on defending their software and plan to roll out a test for games media to verify. Now, I recall my first encounter with Denuvo was with video game Rime, which suffered significant performance issues which magically disappeared once Denuvo was removed, despite the developers' protestations that Denuvo did not cause any problems. For Rime, Denuvo was cracked inside of a week for that particular game. And for my own comparisons, I had played the game Rime with its latest build along with the subsequent patch where the only released data for that patch was the removal of Denuvo. And the difference there was stark and extremely noticeable, and for those wondering, yes, I did verify I'd installed 0 driver updates between those two builds. For comparison, the YouTuber Overlord Gaming released multiple videos showcasing benchmarks for different games both before and after Denuvo that included loading times to main menu, including initial loading times and subsequent loads, average and maximum frame rates, mission load times, and average and minimum frames per second. They were quite well done, and if you're unfamiliar with those tests, I recommend you go check them out. And in regard to the person who cracked Denuvo for Rime, that individual had the following to say. Game is super nice and you should support devs. Buy it when you can do it. But the game will be much better without that huge abomination called Denuvo. In Rime, that ugly creature went out of control. How do you like the hundreds of thousands of calls to triggers during initial game launch and save game loading? Did you wonder why game loading times were so long? Here's the answer. In previous games like Sniper Ghost Warrior 3, Near, and Prey, they were only about 1,000 triggers called, so we have times 300 here. Next, 300,000 called triggers were just a warm-up for Denuvo. After 30 minutes of gameplay, it became 2 million called triggers. Protection now calls about 10 to 30 triggers every second during actual gameplay, slowing the game down. In previous games like Sniper Ghost Warrior 3, Near, and Prey, there were only about 1 to 2 trigger calls every several minutes during gameplay. So do the math. Don't forget the triggers are under VM, virtualization, and heavily obfuscated, which obviously does not improve performance. Now, this issue with Rime in particular was chalked up by me and several others as Denuvo being implemented poorly, and it was assumed that Denuvo was not operating properly within that game. Later, the only thing closest to a benchmark that I could find regarding Denuvo some 5 years ago was from Game Debate surrounding Doom. However, with that benchmark, there were driver updates along with other updates installed, which meant the benchmark could not be taken at face value and very much lowered its credibility. And as a result of that, at the time, all we had was anecdotal reports and evidence being offered by me and others regarding the impact that Denuvo causes. And then in November 2017, it was shown with Assassin's Creed Origins that Denuvo was certainly causing some problems, and that issue was covered on my channel in the video Assassin's Creed Origins DRM Devastates CPU Performance. And that problem with the severe performance issues with Assassin's Creed Origins was almost definitively confirmed to be due to the tiered anti-piracy system that Ubisoft had implemented within the game. First with Uplay itself, secondly with Denuvo, and then lastly with an additional anti-piracy suite called VM Protect, where it appears that VM Protect was being utilized as a shell to protect Denuvo itself from being cracked, wherein Denuvo was the software suite that was protecting the game itself along with the Uplay requirement. This led to people's CPUs being maxed out while attempting to run the game, and it was even reported that some players encountered blue screens after about an hour of gameplay due to this. Some were also seeing PC shutdowns due to thermal protection kicking in where the PC will turn itself off to prevent damage to the CPU. And it is for reasons like those and others that have caused Denuvo to have earned such a bad reputation over the years. And recognizing that, Steeve Huin, the COO of Irdeto, the company that acquired Denuvo in 2018, decided to hold an interview with Ars Technica's Kyle Orland. Kyle Orland, some of you may recall, was one of the journalists who consistently produced incomplete and incorrect reporting surrounding the Alex Maurer debacle. Yes, Kyle, I remember you well. And within that article, Huin had the following to say. In the pirating cracking community, we're seen as evil because we're helping DRM exist and we're ensuring people make money out of games. He continued with, anti-piracy technologies is to the benefit of the game publishers, but also is a benefit to the players in that it protects the publisher's investment, and it means the publishers can then invest in the next game, but people typically don't think enough of that. Now, the issue as to whether piracy hinders the income of games developers and publishers has been debated at length for years. However, some people may recall that all the way back in 2013, the European Commission ordered a nearly $500,000 study to be conducted on how piracy affects sales of music, movies, video games, and books. Oddly enough, that study was quietly buried by the European Commission for years and likely would have remained so were it not for a single person, Julia Rita, who goes by Felix Rita now. Now, in 2017, Rita, who is an EU parliamentarian, submitted a Freedom of Information request in July of 2017. The Commission stalled the request twice before finally releasing the report to the general public. And a link to that report will be in the pinned comment down below. And the results of the findings of that report in relation to video games? Per Engadget. As for the other industries that rely on copyright, games, books, and music, the study found no robust statistical evidence of displacement of sales by online piracy. In the case of games, it concluded that unauthorized playing might actually make it more likely users will buy them. None of those results ever appeared in any EU Commission academic studies or to the public anywhere else, however. And that last statement they put in there as referring to the European Commission seemingly hiding the study intentionally and cherry-picking the results that they wanted to publish in order to further political agendas. However, regardless of the argument surrounding piracy and its effects on game sales, Huin has decided to run a bit of a test, which that test will consist of a single video game. And remember that because it is important. Now, in the Ars Technica article, they state, to get around that mistrust, Huin said Irdeto is working on a program that would provide two nearly identical versions of a game to trusted media outlets, one with Denuvo protection and one without. After that program rolls out, hopefully sometime in the next few months, Huin hopes independent benchmarks will allow the tech press to see for yourself that the performance is comparable, identical, and that would provide something that would hopefully be trusted by the community. Which, I have to say, this is for all intents and purposes benchmark theater. They are choosing a single game for this test, which is an insignificant sampling even if their test proves that Denuvo still causes issues, which of course it won't because the owners of Denuvo are the ones setting up this test. Now, I personally feel that if a test such as this were to be performed, let's retread over some ground already covered. A good example of that would be a great many number of those games that had Denuvo initially, were eventually cracked, and had Denuvo removed. Now, this would require the participation of those games developers and publishers to do so, and for that test I would set the rules for the test to be the final build of the game just prior to Denuvo's removal, along with a duplicate build of that game with Denuvo removed. And I would do this with a sampling of multiple games, not just one. After all, if the owners of Denuvo select the one game that they are doing this with and they select the build, of course the results are going to favor them. That is going to be a given, and it will in no way do anything to alter the perception of Denuvo within PC gaming. It is, I feel, a sham test that only the ridiculously foolish would ever possibly have any faith in. But those are just the thoughts of a mook with a mic. What do you think about all of this? Let me know down in the comments below. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and I'll see you next time.